In this markup, I didn't talk about the history of the Reins Act and where it came from. A brilliant man named Lloyd Rogers, who's a constituent of mine, grew up in an orphanage in Kentucky where he met the girl that would later become his wife. They were married for 65 years. He was a veteran. He served during the Korean War. And then he came back home and he was a county judge executive in Campbell County, Kentucky. And in his retirement, he became concerned about the drift in government from the legislative branch to the executive branch. So he came up with this idea that really isn't novel. It's the idea that our founders had, which is that all the laws should go through Congress. And so he came up with the Reins Act, and he went to his congressman. I wasn't the congressman at the time. The gentleman before me met with Judge Lloyd Rogers, retired Judge Lloyd Rogers, and took his idea and brought it back to Congress and put it through Leg Council, and that's how the Reins Act came to be. It was a citizen activist who was concerned about the structure of his government, having defended it during the Korean War and having served in local government. He was passionate enough to put this bill together. And so his name is Lloyd Rogers, and I'm sure he's watching this markup right now because he's very engaged. What I hear from the other side of the aisle, arguments against the Reins Act, one is that, well, we've got a CRA, we don't need the Reins Act. We've got a Congressional Review Act. But the Congressional Review Act is inoperable on about 95%, maybe 98% of the regulations that pass, because the Congressional Review Act requires the president who promulgated, the president's administration promulgated a rule. It would require the president to sign on to cancel his own rule. There's only a narrow window of opportunity where the Congressional Review Act has ever been able to be used, and it's very rarely because it has to act within a certain amount of time. The administration would have to change during that period of time, and that's why the Congressional Review Act is not suitable. It also turns, as Mr. Bishop pointed out, the legislative process on its head. Instead of requiring concurrent majorities in both chambers to agree to an idea, it requires, the Congressional Review Act requires concurrent majorities to disagree with an idea that which is presumed to be a law, even though it's just a rule that the executive branch has promulgated. And we should get away from calling them rules. These are laws. They're not rules. The pistol brace so-called rule, you get 10 years in prison for violating that. Give me a break. That's not a rule. That's a law. So the other argument that I hear from the other side of the aisle is that Congress is so dysfunctional that we can't be trusted with lawmaking. Oh my gosh, what if there's an emergency or something? Congress is just incapable of writing laws effectively. I reject that. If you give up on the idea that we are the lawmaking body, then you've given up on this republic and the structure that our founding fathers put in place for our people to be self-governed. But I just want to close by thanking Judge Lloyd Rogers for introducing this bill to his congressman.
Yield?
And I'm going to yield back to Chairman Jordan.
I thank the gentleman for yielding, and I think he's exactly right. The fundamental question is who decides? The, quote, experts, the technocracy, as Mr. Bishop described, or the elected officials? The elected officials who answer to Lloyd Rogers. Who's going to make the decision? That's the fundamental question here. I may not know, we may not know how many parts per billion is necessary. We may not know that, but I do know one thing. Regulations and rules that impact the economy to the tune of millions and millions of dollars and impact the 800,000 folks I get to represent, that's important, and they get to talk to me. They get to talk to Lloyd Rogers gets to talk to Thomas Masse. That is how our system works, and that is the fundamental question that we have to deal with, not just on this bill, but on so many things. We have deferred to the, quote, experts, the experts who think they can run our lives and never be held accountable. That is what this legislation is all about, and I appreciate the story and how this idea came into being from Mr. Rogers, and I yield back to the gentleman.
Would the gentleman yield now?
Well, no, and Lloyd Rogers doesn't get to talk to the faceless bureaucrats.
Exactly.
He gets to talk to his elected representatives. I yield to Mr. Biggs. 15 seconds.
I'm going to go fast. If you've ever been into Senator Mike Lee's office, you can go in and he has a very visual demonstration of this. 14 feet high, that's the annual regulations. about this high, 6 to 8 inches of what Congress puts out as laws. That's wrong.
Gentleman's time is expired. Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes, I think.
Hey, before you click on the next video, if y'all could do me a big favor and hit that like button. The algorithm loves it, and so do I, because it helps promote these videos and get the message out about what our government has been doing. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications, because every time I put out a video, you want to know about it, right? Thanks again, and have a good one. See you on the next one. Peace.